Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous et à toutes, and welcome to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce's Women in Business Summit, Empowering an Inclusive Recovery. Bienvenue au Sommet des Femmes en Affaires, favoriser une reprise inclusive. I'm Catherine Clark, president of Catherine Clark Communications and co-founder of the Honest Talk podcast, which features conversations with notable women professionals, entrepreneurs, and change makers. So I am really very pleased to be here with you today as your MC. And now, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, the Canadian Chamber's President and CEO, the Honorable Perrin Beatty, le Président et chef de la direction du Chambre de commerce du Canada, l'Honorable Perrin Beatty. Over to you, Perrin.
Merci, Catherine. Bonjour et bienvenue au Sommet des Femmes en Affaires, favoriser une reprise inclusive. Now, welcome everybody to the Women in Business Summit, Empowering an Inclusive Recovery. And thank you very much for joining us today. Over a year into the pandemic, most of us are well aware of the many impacts that COVID-19 has had on our businesses and our communities throughout Canada. With vaccine rollouts ramping up, the exit from the tunnel is finally in sight. But as we begin to reopen and look towards a business-led economic recovery, it's critical to understand that this recovery will not be possible if it's not inclusive. Women have been and continue to be disproportionately affected by COVID-19 as both employers and employees. They are overrepresented in some of the hardest hit sectors like food services, travel and tourism, and personal care services. They're overwhelmingly the primary caregivers for children at home, and school and daycare closures have forced them to take on the unsustainable juggling act of both full-time childcare and other domestic responsibilities alongside work responsibilities. As a result, many are dropping in productivity or leaving the workforce entirely. Since November 2020, more than 135,000 Canadian women have left the workforce, the majority of whom are ages 20 to 24 and 35 to 39. This figure represents an entire generation of entrepreneurs, potential board directors, and C-suite leaders whom we risked losing permanently. As we all grapple with the economic fallout from COVID-19, it's far too easy to gloss over these statistics or to compartmentalize them as a woman's issue. What the Chamber and the Council for Women's Advocacy have been trying to make clear, and what we hope to drive home today, is that this is not a woman's issue. This is an economic issue that affects all Canadians of all genders, in all sectors, and in all parts of the country. And ensuring that every Canadian can play their full part in our economy and in our society is obviously a question of simple fairness. But it's also much more than that. It's plain good business to recognize that we can't afford to waste the skills and the dreams of any of our citizens. If we want to successfully lead our country's recovery and set out a path to job creation and economic growth, the entire business community needs to act. We need to play our part in generating solutions to keep women in the workforce and to help build and maintain their success as entrepreneurs, leaders, and employees, not just through the recovery from the pandemic, but well beyond. And that's what this summit is all about. From discussions about the resilience of women-owned businesses to upskilling and reskilling, leadership, diversity, mental health, and the next generation of entrepreneurs. These are vital learning opportunities for the entire Canadian business community. And even more important will be the calls to action that emanate from today. Well, we'll of course be celebrating the incredible achievements of women in business. The focus of today's summit is ultimately on tangible outcomes, identifying necessary changes, equipping ourselves with strategies and tools, and implementing them to help to create change. But before we dive into the day's inspiring agenda, first, I'd like to reinforce what Catherine was saying earlier, to thank our sponsors, and especially our presenting sponsor, Salesforce, and our media sponsor, Postmedia, for helping make this day possible. And I'd also like to thank our Chamber network. Our network is at the heart of everything we do, And we're incredibly proud of the work that's being done every day by provincial, territorial, and local chambers of commerce and boards of trade to support the millions of Canadian businesses that power our country. I've no doubt that today will provide insights that we all need to move forward on these issues together. It's now my pleasure to introduce two people who are currently leading the Canadian Chamber's charge when it comes to meaningful policy action and addressing the barriers facing women in the workforce. The co-chairs of our Council for Women's Advocacy, Penny Wise and Kevin McCready. Now, with over 20 years of international experience, Penny Wise took over the leadership of 3M Canada's president last year after holding a number of senior leadership roles in the company, including Global Marketing Director of the Safety and Industrial Business Group. For his part, Kevin McCready is CEO and Chief Investment Officer of AGF Management Limited, and has previously served as President and CIO of PNC Capital Advisors, LLC. We are very lucky to have them. Penny, Kevin, over to you.
Perrin, thank you, and welcome everyone to our inaugural Women's in Business Summit. This is an important topic that we'll be discussing throughout the day about how we reopen and how we get women back on their feet after what we've just experienced. Before I hand it over to Penny, a few thoughts. I joined as co-chair of the Council for Women's Advocacy in the fall of 2019, which seems many, many years ago now, not just approaching 2. Our original mission was to think about how to increase representation in the C-suite at the board level for Canadian companies. When I moved to Canada several years ago, it was apparent to me that as a G7 country, we looked very different in terms of some of the initiatives around women leadership in our industries. And our original mission was to think about how to take best practices and drive that forward here in Canada. And then, COVID hit, and Penny joined me as co-chair of the Women's Council in the spring of 2020. And if you think about what Penny does, and she'll talk about it, and who she works with, her joining us and having the time to give to us and me at that time was incredible in the depth of the beginning of what we did not know was in front of us. My first meeting with Penny, we had an open, honest dialogue about what we were seeing in our workforces. I have the privilege to lead a company that is in the knowledge industry. When we sent everybody home, they were out of harm's way. Penny has a very different experience, which hopefully she'll touch on. But we shared our thoughts about how some of our single mothers, our working parents, our working mothers, the burden that we were seeing. And we quickly realized that all the things we wanted to do for the council in the fall of 19 really had to be put on hold. And we had to pivot to how do we get our working mothers, our working entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs through this next period. And none of us at the time probably thought we'd be still sitting here in 2021, just exiting lockdown here in Canada. Throughout that period, we literally worked with government officials, the chamber, and others to really try to find ways to keep women front and center, whether they be through trying to advocate for tax credits for our working mothers, upskilling programs, ways to have businesses like our own help in getting women back into the workforce. The data that Perrin has referenced is shocking. If we don't open the correct way and bring women back, bring women entrepreneurs back, the suffering that we've been through will really set us back for a decade. Think about the single entrepreneur who couldn't go to work, couldn't run her company because there was no childcare, because there were no schools that were open. So how do we think about advocating for rapid testing in schools when we get to the fall in case we have another wave? How do we think about helping each other who are entrepreneurs and support them in a reopening effort so that we can exit this in an economy that is, again, stronger than where we left it? And to do that, and I think Perrin's right, this is an economic issue. It's not solely a women's issue. So with that, let me hand it over to Penny.
Well, thanks, Kevin. And thank you to Perrin and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce for holding this event today. Really looking forward to the day and hearing from the many experts and business leaders today. And welcome to everyone who's joined. In March of 2020, my daughter was just about to graduate from university with a science degree and take on the world. And I was incredibly proud. And then the pandemic took hold and we went into lockdown. And we saw the effects of schools being closed, people needing to take care of elderly parents, no childcare available, and so many other issues facing women, whether their businesses were shut down or whether they couldn't get to work. The effects on women were massive. And then the news headlines were proclaiming how the progress that women had made over the last 2 to 3 decades, that progress was potentially slipping away in the pandemic as more women chose to stay home. I think Perrin mentioned 135,000 women in Canada have chosen to leave work because of the pandemic. Women were leaving the workforce to look after their families. Women were disproportionately affected by the pandemic because they were not in pandemic-proof sectors. For me personally, the idea of the advancement of women has always been that the next generation takes the baton that we pass to them and they move it further along. And the thought that my daughter might not be able to do that really energized me and galvanized me and others around taking action to make sure that the next generation is not starting behind, but moving ahead. And that goes for, all women, regardless of where you are in your career, that there is an opportunity to continue to move ahead. So over the last 15 months, I've had the opportunity to work with an amazing group of people on the Council for Women's Advocacy. And we focused on ways to advocate, to support getting women back to work and support those at work and making sure that we're getting the back into the economy, that we are adding value, that we are driving growth, and we are prepared for a business-led recovery. And that we are supporting women who have left the workforce, who could work from home, who are working in manufacturing facilities who couldn't, so that we're providing all of the supports they need to be successful. Kevin and I both vehemently believe that getting women back to work and having the supports behind them to work is critical for the success of Canada's economic recovery and growth, and also important for our future competitiveness. And this takes partnership. It's a partnership with business leaders like yourselves. I'm delighted that we're here today to look for strategies, solutions, and actions that we can take for a business-led economic recovery, getting women engaged and accelerated. I see this as an opportunity and a turning point for us in the business community to make a real impact. Thank you for being here today and bringing your energy, your ideas, and your passion for success. And so now, it's my pleasure, and without further ado, to introduce our keynote speaker for the Women in Business Summit, Mandy Rennehan, the blue-collar CEO and founder of freshco.ca. That's not the grocery store. Mandy Rennehan, aka Bear, is called the blue-collar CEO for her ability to seamlessly navigate between the white and blue-collar worlds and to respectfully tell it like it is. Mandy is a sought-after speaker, multiple award-winning entrepreneur, philanthropist, and trade industry ambassador. Freshco and Mandy have received countless business awards, including, but not limited to, Canada's Most Admired CEO, Top 25 Women of Influence, the RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Momentum Award, CGLCC LGBT Business of the Year, and Atlantic Business Magazine's Top 50 CEOs. That's a mouthful, Mandy. But Mandy's vision goes well beyond building successful businesses. She is redefining the collar blue to help solve the massive skilled trade shortage in North America. It is a profound economic and social issue that affects everyone. Consumers are paying more and waiting longer for services. Companies aren't able to scale, and important infrastructure projects like roads, transit, and hospitals, they're being delayed. Mandy is challenging the misconception that white-collar jobs are somehow better or more desirable than blue-collar ones. Society needs both collars, and if we do not change this, the crippling effects of the skilled labor shortage are only going to get worse. Bear is also a lead advisor to the federal government's national campaign encouraging apprenticeships and promoting the skilled trades as a career. Mandy defies labels. The description she often gets is refreshing. Her respectfully uncensored honesty is matched by her quick wit, her East Coast humor, and her big heart. It is impossible to remain unchanged after coming in contact with this authentic, self-taught, and self-made powerhouse. And we couldn't be more excited to welcome her to the stage today. Mandy, to say it's great to have you here is an absolute understatement, and I can't wait to hear more about you and your work. Welcome.
Thank you, Penny. Hi, everybody. Listen, really, Tim Hortons, Starbucks. I'm your free version today. Thank you, Penny. Everybody that I listened to prior all had very valid points about what's happening. And here's the thing, I'm talking to you in that little green dot, and it's a slight bit uncomfortable. Not really what I'm used to. This is a different stage, but you know what? At the end of the day, this is where we're at, and very excited because when you say business, my ears go up. And so let me just give you a very thin version of a fat story, and then we're going to get into the really, 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 really good stuff of why you're on the screen today and what kind of advice you might be looking for. And to be quite frank, maybe I'm just going to be a little bit vulnerable about, yeah, all those awards are great. And yeah, apparently, you know, I've done some things right. But at the end of the day, none of us saw this coming. So picture it. Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, which I'm here right now, but that's a whole other story for itself. And here I was born down here in the big city of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. I was fascinated by wood and by everything from a very young age. To make a fat story thin, my dad was a lobster fisherman. My mom was a homemaker. I had 3 brothers. I didn't have a hope in hell of being feminine. Here you are today. Always was a tomboy. Very proud of it. And how did I motivate people even back in the day? I was great with sports, you know, being a little bit of a CEO and everything, you know, got a little bit more pounds on. I call them pandemic pounds. And I just say, you know what, it just got a little bit fluffier through this. Moving on. So what did I do? I listened to my mom and dad fight constantly about money. You know, when the lobsters weren't plentiful down here, what were you going to do? We used to sit and wait for the car to come right up over the hill to see if there was any of the Sobeys plastic bags hanging out from the top of mom's car, because it was bad at times. And, you know, in westernized terms, yes, we were poor. My dad worked day in, day out. My mom, all she did was worry. So my first North Star was, how do I make my mom and dad's life easier? And so down the street, I heard some guys talking one day, and everybody, just so you know, I had just turned 10, right into the double digits. And I heard them talking about a fish called a kayak that you can dip upstream, that goes and lays its egg in the lake, but it comes up from the ocean. And all the lobsters love chewing on these kayaks at the bottom of the ocean. So what did I do? I went and rounded up some of the guys on the street, and I said, listen, I'll cut you back 10%. I don't exactly think that the term was that professional back then. I think I told them that I'd give them, you know, basically a portion of what I got. And the next time that we played road hockey or we were playing tennis or ball, that they could pick me first. First lesson in motivating. It worked. So we used to have to wait for the tides to come in. Here we went. We were all sneaking out, dipping these kayaks at night. We lived on a big hill. How was I going to get these feed bags of these great big fish up the driveway? You steal your neighbor's training wheels. That's exactly what you do. So that even back then, I mean, that was the innovation, people. Like, that was the innovation. I just turned 46 yesterday. So that was when I was 10. So all I had was training wheels. So we pushed them up the driveway on the seat of my bike, put them on my dad's truck. Probably about 3 days later, he says, you know what, Mandy, you tell them fellers on the street, very East Coast, you tell them fellers on the street they're doing a great job. And I said, Pop, yes, I will. Now hand over the cash. And so it wasn't a day later that the big catch came. And this was my first time in realizing that I was either going to get my ass kicked for being caught going out the house, or I was going to take a chance and go up and get my dad and my brothers. There were so many fish that we couldn't catch them all. I have no idea what to even call it today, whatever happened to spawn, but we couldn't land them. And I'm like, wow, these fish, they're going to die. Like, we're going to miss them. I could see the money even at 10. So I go up and I tap my dad, who's probably only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night anyway, getting up very early to go lobster fishing. And he turned over and looked at me and said, what in the love of God are you doing out? And I said, Pop, I'm the one. That's the fish broker. I'm the one that's getting the fish and putting them on your truck. And he just kind of stared at me, kind of like I'm staring at that little green eye right now. I mean, the really great thing today is that, I buy my truck every 3 years, but I digress. So him and my brothers came down, helped us. So just to give you an idea, normal night we caught 3 bags. This night we caught 30. And so after it was done, I was excited all in my glory, but I knew the hammer was going to drop. And he looked at me and he said, Mandy, you're 10. You're 10 and you're a girl. Well, it never dawned on me that being a girl was an issue. And to be quite frank, it never did going forward. So you fast forward, and then I started buying tools with my money. Of course, I had to send my mom in town for the cut and curl. We all know what that was back in the day. Today they call it the spa. And then I was able to buy my dad a scope for his gun because he was a big hunter. So, even back then, my North Star was, how do I make my parents happy? How do I get through this? And so with the rest of the money, I started buying tools. And we used to start building log cabins with the same guys in the woods. And, finally there were days that they just didn't show up, and I was like, well, why aren't they showing up? Why don't they have the same passion as me? So a lot of times I was out there doing it on my own. Now, listen, everybody, I certainly wouldn't book one of them on Airbnb for the weekend, but I will tell you, even back in their time, I was doing something that I knew my mind loved, which was structure and construction. And I have no idea where that came from. In fact, nobody still knows, but does it matter? I'm going to say no. So then you fast forward, I didn't even go to my high school graduation. I was working for, at the time, I was in the 4-H club also, great organization, the MBA of young people, and literally working on different farms. And this was up towards the big city of Halifax. And here was the wonderful thing. The wonderful thing is that I was working day and night. I mean, I was a tank, still am, to be quite honest, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And I remember saying, I want to get into construction. Like, I want to understand the trades. And so I used to call people and I used to say, listen, hey, my name's Mandy Rennehan, and I would really like to come work with you. So electricians, plumbers, bricklayers, roofers, you name it. And they'd hang up the phone on me, when you could actually just hang up the phone. So I'd call them back and I'd say, hey, you know what? I really, really will be an asset to you and you'll like me. And I promise you that I will not be a pain in the ass. What were they going to say? No. So they didn't. And so all these different tradespeople took me on. I worked at night learning how to pull wire, how to change toilets, you name it. I mean, I learned a lot. And then my big job came, refinishing a very wealthy couple house in Halifax. And I was one of the laborers on this installation and floor refinishing company. And one day the owner came over and he looked at me and he says, Mandy, you seem to be the only person that can show up here sober, smiling, and that potentially knows what they're doing. Now, you got to realize, everybody, I didn't have a sweet level clue what I was doing. And he said, can you do this job? Now, remember, I just turned 18. I said, of course I can do this job. I could feel my bowel in my boot. And I said, but I'm going to need your credit card. I was 18. So he looked at me and he kind of laughed and he said, I have no idea why I'm going to give this girl from Yarmouth my credit card. And he did. So I booted her home, grabbed everybody I could find, rented a truck, rented a warehouse, bought hardwood, taught myself how to sand it, called the guy so many times in the States about refinishing stuff that I filled up his voice box. Yeah, that was when you filled everybody's voice box up. And finally he called and he said, who is this crazy girl from Canada? And finally, I told him my story and he said, you know what? You have me so over the moon with curiosity. I'm not only just going to bring the product over to you. He says, I'm going to show you how to apply it. That was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me. Fast forward 8 days later, the son of the owner came back and there was a little tear in his eye, and it was exotic hardwood at the time. So if you know anything about wood, you know that it started out being one color, it turned another. I had no idea that it was supposed to do that. Neither did he, but it looked gorgeous. And he says, I said, are you happy or are you sad or like, what's happening? He says, Mandy, I didn't know what to expect. I gave my credit card to an 18-year-old from Yarmouth, but he said, it's done. You've done it early and it's gorgeous. Well, I could feel my bowel making its way back up but I was so tired. I said, well, I'm so glad you feel that way because I didn't make any money. And he goes, you're 18. What the hell do you know about bidding a job? So he didn't just pay me. He paid me double. And my name spread like a bad fart around the Maritimes. That's for real, people. So the next thing you know, I'm doing work for Irving. Sobeys, don't even get me started. I was here first, Freshco. That's a whole other bottle of wine. Moving on, Salter Street Corporation, Canada Post, and I was 18. By the time I was 20, I was doing over $500,000 of business, which doesn't seem like a lot, but holy Toledo, it really was. Then you fast forward to one of the biggest retailers in the world. I did a job for them. They called me and said, who is this girl in Halifax? You did the job twice as quickly as anyone else, and you were half the price. And, of course, I'm thinking, if people keep telling me that, I'm going to keep upping my prices. Anyway, the next thing you know, I am doing all of Ontario for this retailer. The next thing you know, they're putting me on a plane at 24 years old, sending me to San Francisco. Now listen, everybody, until 21, I'd never even had a freaking garden salad. I was from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Everything was chicken, lobster, and potato salad. So here I was headed to the big San Francisco. And I walked in, and who do you call? You call your Newfoundland friend. And she's like, holy shit, bye, here I come. You know what? I'm going to be your secretary. So what we got on the plane, we're sitting there, and I should have been concentrating on the presentation I was going to give because she had taken me to Reedman's beforehand. That's right, everybody. Reedman's got me all dressed up in a nice blouse, pair of pants, because I was wearing work boots, a hoodie, and work pants because that was me. And we get on the plane, and God love me, the guy next to me, his paint would have peeled the carpet off the floor, and between candy and coffee, I was wound. We walked out down to Folsom Street overlooking the big bridge, and I take a big deep breath, and in we go. We're sitting in the aisle, and the guy comes over with the headset and the book, and he goes, hey, Canada, you got 7 minutes. So my friend from Newfoundland calls him a dick, and I'm like, well, you can't do that. Like, you can't do that. No, I was thinking that, but I said, you can't do that. So I get up, everybody. Both the hems out of my pants fell out. So my Newfoundland friend looks and goes, holy shit, boy, you can't go in there like that. She says, get in the bathroom. So I get in the bathroom. She runs across the hall, grabs a stapler. I jump up on the counter. Oh my Lord, it was soaked. The woman before us must have been having a hot flash, and the next thing you know, the whole thing was soaked, my bum was soaked, and my Newfoundland friend stapling my pants. My 7 minutes turned to 4. We're laughing. She's got my bum under a hairdryer, which we all know back then, those ones wouldn't have blown the hair back on a mosquito. So the reality was that my butt was soaked, thank God my pants were black, and my hems were stapled. I make it down the hallway. I walk into corporate America. There's 5 white men sitting on the other side of that counter with a table that was at least 40 feet long overlooking that bridge. And one of them stood up, and I was literally, I don't even know if I went to his belly button, and he was the big guy. And he looks at me, he says, Mandy, I've heard a lot of great things from you, and here's the lesson, everybody. Even back then, I looked and I said, I will always be me. I will never, ever, ever not be me. I will never just fall into that corporate box, even back then, because I just didn't even know how. So without saying what people would have thought I was saying, I said, well, it's a good thing, because I said, not just everybody flies a Canadian lesbian clear across the continent to give a presentation. It was the biggest silence that I'd had since my dad stared at me when I was a fish broker. Then all of a sudden, their faces turned red. They stared at each other, and they howled with laughter. And they were like, this is going to be awesome. So that 7 minutes turned into an hour. And at 24 years of age, I walked out of there with a $4 million contract. The girl in Reedman's stapled pants and shoes she probably should have never had on to begin with. The idea is that when you look at my life, and this is where I want to let everybody know on the screen, guys and gals, is that I've never segregated. I've always supported everybody. But I can tell you that when this pandemic hit, as everybody knows, I was flying around like everyone else, tired out of my mind, almost accepting that I wasn't tired, needing a really, really, really big vacation. And I remember I'd lined my mom up and said, listen, we're going down to Florida. And she's like, only if you come get me. That's a whole other story, everybody. So finally, I find a way to get to Halifax to get her. I'd never been excited. I hadn't had a vacation in so long. And so we get there. That was March 11th. Then it happened. I started watching the news. Of course, I start making phone calls. And I'm like, this is not going to be 30 days. So we get in the car and we drive back to Ontario. And I remember instantly thinking, wow, Freshco, not the grocery store. We had just completely ramped up all of our employees. We had taken on 3 units. We had renovated them. We had more vehicles. We had more people. We were ramping up to grow 20 to 25% that year. Instantly, you see every one of the retailers across, like all of them that I do business with, all the ones that your kids dream about, the Nikes, the Tiffany's, the you name it, Under Armour's, Home, all of them shut down. All the work that we'd invested in, gone. And instantly I sat there and I'm like, what are you going to do, Mandy? What are you going to do? And what I realized instantly was even my top level were shocked. I always said that, anybody can steer a boat in clear, calm waters. But this pandemic was like a tornado that had ripped into businesses. And if anybody thinks that it's even less than that, I really believe that you're underestimating the situation, which I don't believe most people were. So instantly, when you look at ramping up, and when you look at free enterprise and capitalism and everything in the world that I was an entrepreneur and being the only shareholder and funding it all, I, for the first time, was so fearful beyond anything because I looked and I went, wow, what's going to happen? So what did I do? I forgot about how tired I was. I forgot about the fear. I forgot about everything. I just started looking internally at the business. And I really, really dug deeply into it because I had to, because I was the founder. I was the owner. Nobody knew how this ticked and clocked better than me. And so there were things that I looked and I'm like, this is going, that's going. We all basically cut the fat, did this, did that. And, I think that the other thing that we also need to underestimate is that there was a lot of finger pointing, a lot of people looking and saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. And I think that this is where there was a lot of judgment. There was a lot of opinions about what business owners should or shouldn't be doing. But I will say this. My old saying is that if you want to play with the big dogs, you got to come off the step. And unless you were off the step sinking like the rest of us, you should have had no opinion. Women, as said at the beginning of this talk, were not evenly or even completely even close to be equally, even close to understanding what happened. So instantly, I can only tell you what I did because that's just me. I had my trailers out on the highway for all the people that kept us going, the truckers, the couriers, everyone. They said, Mandy, your business is dying. What are you doing? I said, we can't stop being who we are. These poor people who are stocking the liquor stores, stocking the grocery stores, they have no place to go to the bathroom that's adequate and wash their hands because all the people out there making decisions aren't business people. They didn't think about all those essential people out there working their arses off to make sure that everyone else was comfortable at home. So we moved all our trailers out on the side of the QEW. And I had a big sign that said, you're awesome. And these are clean. And I'm going to personally clean them myself. Because it didn't matter. It wasn't about me. It was about everyone else. And then I was moving, calling clients, doing everything I could to understand how was I going to save this business that I just spent the last 25 years building, a brand, a culture. I didn't stop being me, not once. all the women and the men in our country, in our company that had children. It's unfathomable. Unfathomable what these people, especially the women, had to go through, that they had to do something, to be quite honest, that no one should ever have to do. They had to choose. They had to choose between their business, their life, their brain, their brilliance, or I look after my family. No one should ever be put in that position. And what it showed all of us, even me, that I built my company for any disastrous weather, but I did not build it for a tornado followed by a tsunami. And that's what this pandemic did. Through it all, what I realized is that, you know what? I got more stressed. I got more tired. I put more weight on because I just was trying to help everybody do everything. Sounding familiar, everybody? Because that's what I do. So this was the first thing that I did. Who was filling up my tank? I had run out of gas, but I couldn't run out of gas. I was just on the way back up, seeing the light. I had done that. And many media people asked me, they're like, Mandy, what did you learn about yourself in this pandemic? I'm going to tell you, everybody, if you're listening at home, I figured out that I was more effing awesome than I was even before. I had resilience that I had built up. I had scars that I never hid that made me look and say, there's a reason why you're you. But here was the thing. I was dying. I was dying because I was tired before this happened. And so what I realized was very quickly is that if I didn't fill my own gas tank up, I could never expect other people to do it. But all the other people out there doing wonderful things for people, yep, that was filling the bottom over. But I needed to start looking after my health. I needed to start relying on people that I could rely on. I needed to start really, truly eating better. They even got me meditating, everybody. Yes, that is true story. And it works, I will tell you. Exercising again. Because what I realized is that half hour to 45 minutes and helping, and asking my partner to please help me with, I can't go all day without eating, and I can't be worried about this. I became, again, a performance machine. I knew that I needed to help myself in order to help everybody else. And it's one thing that the women on this call that you are listening is that you are wired to think of everyone else before yourself. And I'm here to tell you, bullshit. It's time for me to let you know that it's time for you to give to yourself. You need to. You gotta fill up your own gas tank because you're the only one that knows where the hole is to put it in. You gotta do it yourself, and you gotta surround yourself with people that can support you and understand that if you're on this call today and you own a business, you are wired differently. But you should never, ever have to choose. Mandy pivots. Yep. What did I do? I didn't lick my wounds and I didn't whine about it. Between talking and changing the way that everybody looks at this industry, because we have a systemic trade shortage, and if you're a consumer, you need to know it's devastating. This pandemic only brought it out worse. Everybody wanted things done. You couldn't find a plumber for a month. Why? Because all of us were telling our kids, I'm going to take me out of that. Everybody was telling their kids, our parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, if you're going to be respected, you're going to go to university. Bullshit. I was a pilot project that went really right. Left home with a suitcase full of anything I had in it, a personality, and then on the way out, I figured that I was gay. What a damn resume, everybody. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter gender, who you want to sleep with, the color of your skin. It's who you are. And here's the thing. I wasn't going to let anybody stand in my way. So what did I do? I went and called the 3 most powerful self-made women in construction and said, we're better together. We're better together. So of course we're having an alcoholic beverage over Zoom. And they were like, you know what, Bear, why the hell didn't we think of this before? And I said, I have no idea, because this industry needs a missile of ethics and I can't do it on my own. So everybody, my pivot was I went out and I relinquished control, 100% control of my company, to 3 powerful, wonderful human beings that now has become Freshco 4.0. In the middle of that, I had a TV show that was greenlit through HGTV called Trading Up. And what's Trading Up? It's apprentices. And it's about teaching them that you want to see a female show up at your door to give you a quote on your house. Why? Because they're awesome. It's not because they're female, it's because they're damn awesome. And they come with a whole other skill set that complement the males in the industry. So the reality is that through all of this, yes, I still have more weight to lose, but it's coming. The reality is that resilience, ladies, if you're listening, you have it. You always did. And the reality is that the future's bright, because I will tell you what this did, is it opened up all of our pain points in society, as an economy, as everything, and made us realize that none of us were prepared for this. But what it did is it started a big ball rolling off that hill. And what I'm going to say to you right now is that there are so many people out there that know, without the powerful women in business to start leading the caveats in the different ways and the nuances that have been missing in everything we know in this economy, it needs you. And I'm not going to play politics, but I'll let everybody know that the happiest thing that I heard through this whole pandemic was that the government was looking at giving out childcare. Why? Because you need help. All of us businesses need to try it. And I can see that Penny's just come back on, and we're going to open this up to questions. Everybody, thank you very much. We could go on forever. Now, listen, if it was later, it would be awesome. It would even go even longer. But there's the thin version of a fat story.
Mandy, you were so inspiring and so uplifting in what you shared. It's a good job I was off camera, because I was howling with laughter with a couple of things. I had a couple of questions that I just wanted to ask you a little bit more. Your story is so inspiring, and your authenticity and your charisma and your strength really shines through. So one of the recommendations that we made as the Women's Advocacy Committee was that we want women to consider different careers and reskill and look at skilled trades. And I follow a couple of really wonderful young women on LinkedIn who are in skilled trades, and they share what they do. But do you have advice for women who are thinking about moving into skilled trades or looking at a different career or something else that could, how do you get the strength to make those kinds of decisions and changes in your life?
You know what? I think it really just boils down to this, Penny. You know, I've often said that, you know, all those women before us that fought for equality and that fought to vote and that fought. There were even women before me that were in the trade industry, very few, but even people like me have beat the door down. They've beat the door down, and we're looking for, you know, different women to come in and lift the windows up in this house to really just bring the fresh air in, because what we've realized is that the trade industry is not just for men. It never was. But, you know, on top of the hierarchy, Penny, behind, you know, only guys get into this, or, you know, you need to go to college, women already felt that there was a barrier there, that maybe I don't belong here. Well, I'm here to tell you today, you belong here. I can't say enough about it, the technology. You know, is there anything more gratifying than using your mind, your hands, to maintain the Canada that our ancestors built? You know, to show them the pride behind the fact that we have a whole modernized pipeline we need to fill. And the reality is that we all know, Penny, that the best place is to have a multicultural, cross-gender, you know, approach on everything, you know, because we need people to think differently. It can't be the way it always was. And so right now, I can say without a doubt that, Freshco right now employs 80% of our staff are women. I didn't go out trying to do that. It's just that women just have a skill set that really knows how to drive it. So we've really been able to set the fact that you belong here. And there's nothing more rewarding than the trades. And I will tell you right off the bat that it's addictive. It's addictive. It's addictive. It's addictive. Once you get in it, you're never going to want to get out of it. And you're going to want to keep learning all the different trades, hands down. And listen, that's just the way it is, period.
Awesome. Kind of on another little twist, you talked about your lifestyle, your partner, telling everyone at that famous company in San Francisco that you were a lesbian. So I'm really curious about your thoughts on building inclusive spaces, being inclusive. It's obviously part of your nature and it's just who you are and what you do. But do you have any thoughts for us on how we can be more inclusive, how we can build safer spaces, how we can, emulate some of the things that you just did naturally without even realizing you were doing it?
Well, and I think that's the lesson, Penny. I think we also have to understand right now that we're in a real social shift of this isn't okay anymore. And I think back then, I was diversified when nobody even knew what the word mean, and I was inclusive before it was a great idea. It was just who I always was. I believed in talent. I didn't care what you were packing. I didn't care the color of yours. I didn't care. And so that was just organically me. However, we don't see that all over the place. And so the idea is that when people ask me, and I think, Penny, this is important, they said, Mandy, were you discriminated against because you were female and you were gay? And I said, not a lot, if very little. And they're shocked. But I think that one of the things I try when I'm mentoring, different groups from the LGBT community or from the BIPOC community or wherever it is, one of the things we got to realize is that confidence happens in stages. And I think that what's happening is that we live in a now obsessed society, Penny, that everybody wants everything right now. The peer pressure is incredible. The scars on my body from getting my teeth kicked in 18 billion times and them growing back straighter and whiter was the best thing that ever happened to me because I was able to learn as I went. And so the point is that when I walked into that day, people didn't see me as being female. They didn't see me as being gay. They liked Mandy Rennehan because I was authentic. I was not trying to pretend to be anyone else. And I think today, Penny, a lot of the diversity in the world today, like women, have that barrier that's already kind of been put in place to say, do I fit in that box that's been made by this part of society? The answer is no. So they walk in there uncomfortable. Well, we all know what happens when two people are staring at each other that are uncomfortable. One walks away. Well, he was discriminating against me. Well, maybe not. You two didn't talk because you were uncomfortable. So the idea is that what I'm trying to teach more than anything, Penny, to everyone out there, is that being real and being authentic, whether people like it or not, you know where they're coming from. And that is my advice to companies out there. When you're thinking about being inclusive, be very clear about who you are and what your brand is and stick with it because that's your name. And we all have to make hard decisions. We all have to say, listen, you don't fit into our culture because, to be quite frank, you're an idiot stick. That's just the way it is, right? And I think that that's the idea is as many as the big consulting firms, you name it, that have invited me to speak, Penny, the reality is that they want their CEO to speak the truth. And they want them to be vulnerable. And they want them to say, hey, listen, I'm not perfect, but by the love of God, we're going to figure out where that is. So diversity and inclusion, Penny, is about understanding who you are and being authentic and start being comfortable around each other and stop acting like you need to be somebody else.
Really great talking about being an empathetic leader, which has really been demonstrated over and over again during the pandemic, that's the kind of leadership that was required. I have one more question. And as you're talking about being your authentic self, I think about young women in high school, and we think about the stigmas and the social pressures. And if you had advice to give to a young woman in high school thinking about what she might want to do or to not be that shrinking violet or to not step back, do you have any thoughts of what you would say to someone in
My
that
thought would
position?
be, the door's open. It's time for you to walk through it, and it's time for you to sit at the table because there's a chair there for you now.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I really appreciate what you've shared today. I am so inspired. I am so energized. Twitter has just been lighting up on my phone beside me here of all the wonderful feedback that attendees are sharing about your session.
At the end of the day, I'm going to apologize to anybody here. Sentence enhancing words are in my DNA. So, you know what? If a few of them dropped, I'm going to apologize in advance, but really not apologize and just let you know that, you know what? I'm just so grateful. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Penny, you know what? We're what makes the Canadian economy go round. And don't ever forget that. Without us, there'd be nothing. Just like with the trades, we'd be standing here with what God gave us. We'd have no bricks, no roof, no transportation, no food, no nothing. What I would say to everybody out there today is to say, you know what, if you're bored, you know what, if you want a different career that's prideful, that pays, that there's respect just waiting for you, there's no age limit, Penny. If you're in your 40s, 50s, it's here for you. And wow, I'm so excited.
And I think that's really wonderful because as we do come out of the pandemic and we think about where women can go, it's never too late to pivot. Just like you said, what you changed in terms of your business and your organization, it's never too late to take care of yourself and put yourself first as much as anyone else. You had some really, really inspiring messages, and you don't need to apologize for the sentence enhancing words because you've talked all about being authentic and your authenticity, and that is part of your authenticity. And it wouldn't have been the same if you'd been quite as careful with all the words. I don't know if you have any last words to share with our audience before we move on to the next segment, but we still have a couple minutes left if there's more that you'd like to share. And you know, no one would be sad to hear more from you for sure.
You know, Penny, I think that the only thing I would share is that, you know, I think I want to tell everybody out there that's, you know, really made the sacrifice to be an entrepreneur or be a business owner, to know that if you feel like you've had the shit kicked out of you, you have. And that it's okay to, you know, to take a couple hours or a day or even a week to feel a little bit sorry for yourself and know that, you know what, my mother's 74 years old and she's never lived through a pandemic. And the reality is that if I can give anybody any advice that really truly has sung to me, is that every lap of resilience that this pandemic has taught me has made me a better leader. It's made me a better person. And I'm just chopping at the bit to really go after, you know, what I was missing before. Yep. So for me, if anything, look at the opportunities. Don't stay there in that negative place, and know that you rose once and you will rise again, like I am. And you know what? And I'm better for it. I know somebody might want to, you know what, give me a kick to the chops, and that's okay. But I'll tell you what, if you're tired, you deserve to be tired. But I will say that, Penny, if there's anybody out here, the gals, even the guys, support each other. And you know what? And just say you're tired and just go out and swear at a tree or something. Just do it. You know, whatever the therapy is for you, know that this pandemic it really, if you sit back and really look at it, it's made us all better, and it will make the Canadian economy better. It will make our businesses better. And for God's sakes, don't stop fighting for what's right, knowing that all of us have given up our lives to be this, and we deserve to be treated respectfully.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mandy. Really appreciate that you were here with us today. And everyone here is so appreciative of your insights. And just like you said, you have set a pretty high caffeinated bar and tone for the rest of the discussions we'll be having today.
I wake up like this. Okay. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care.